The wind moved slowly over the dead land full of broken buildings and silent cars standing like bones of old monsters. The sky was gray and smoke was rising from far away. As if the world still cried from its wounds, a boy named Liam walked through the empty streets wearing torn clothes and carrying a small bag on his back. His face was dirty, but his eyes were sharp, always watching, always hoping to find something useful, food, water, anything. He moved carefully through a fallen store, stepping over glass and rusted metal. His boots made no sound. He opened old shelves and broken drawers, but nothing was there, only dust and darkness. He sighed and sat down on a rock. He took out a small energy bar from his bag. It was the last one he had. His fingers held it tight as he looked at it, thinking of the hunger in his stomach and the long walk back to his shelter. But then he heard something, a soft sound like a whimper, not human, something small, and afraid he stood up quickly and followed the noise past the broken walls and twisted metal. He found a pile of rubble, shaking a little. He moved closer and saw her, a tiny alien girl, no taller than his knees. Her skin was soft blue and glowing faintly, her eyes big and full of fear. She looked hurt and cold. She tried to move back, but she was trapped under a fallen beam. Liam looked at her for a moment, not knowing what to do. She looked at him like he was a monster, like he might eat her or crush her, but he knelt down and spoke in a soft voice, even though he knew she would not understand. He said, "I am not going to hurt you. It is okay. I will help you." He pushed the beam with all his strength, and after some effort it rolled off her. She pulled herself back quickly and sat, shaking, watching him closely like a scared animal. Liam opened his bag again and looked at the energy bar for a long second. Then he unwrapped it and held it out to her. She stared at it, unsure what it was, but hunger won. She took it slowly and smelled it, then bit into it. Her eyes went wide. She chewed fast and ate the whole thing in seconds. Liam smiled and said, "Easy, easy, or you will get sick." But she just looked at him again, this time with less fear, maybe even with a little hope. She pointed at her chest and said, "Neva." Liam repeated the name slowly and pointed at himself, saying, "Liam." She nodded weakly and leaned back against the rubble, her glow dimming. Suddenly, the sky above made a humming sound. Liam looked up and saw a red light scanning the area from a drone high in the sky. It was small but fast and dangerous. He grabbed Neva's hand and pulled her up. She stumbled but followed him. They ran through the ruined streets, dodging fire and broken beams. Liam knew of a hidden place, an old cellar under a burnt house. He had stayed there before. He pulled open the rusty door and helped her inside. They dropped into the darkness and he closed it just as the drone flew over their heads, scanning the area with red beams inside. It was cold and smelled of ash, but it was safe for now. Liam lit a small lantern with a spark battery and the soft yellow light filled the space. Neva looked around with wide eyes, then back at Liam. She touched her belly and gave a small smile as if to say thank you. Liam nodded and sat across from her, both tired, both silent. She looked at her wrist and pressed something on a small silver device. It beeped faintly and sent a signal into the dark sky above. Liam did not understand what it was, but he knew she was trying to call someone, her people. Maybe help was coming. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the ache in his bones and the chill in his blood. When he opened them again, Neva was still looking at him, her eyes full of something he could not name. Maybe wonder, maybe confusion, maybe a question. Why did a human give his last food to a stranger? Why not keep it? Why help at all? Liam did not have the answer. He just knew it felt right, and that maybe, just maybe, kindness still mattered, even in a world as broken as this. They sat there in the cold darkness, the human boy and the little alien girl, not enemies, not strangers, just two souls trying to survive. And outside, above the clouds, something was watching. Something had seen the signal. Something was coming, and the world was about to change forever. The night was silent, except for the soft hum of machines in the sky, hidden among the stars. Far above the clouds, a signal moved fast, a silent whisper across the black space, calling something, something old, something powerful, something listening for years, and now it had heard. Neva sat close to the small lantern, its soft light making her blue skin glow faintly. Her hands trembled as she touched the silver device on her wrist again. She looked at Liam with tired eyes full of both hope and fear. She did not speak, but Liam could feel her thoughts. He saw it in her face. She was scared, not just of Earth, but of something bigger, something chasing her across the stars. Liam sat back, watching the cellar door above them, wondering if the drone had returned. He had seen them before, cold machines built for one purpose: find alien survivors and erase them. Earth was no longer just a home, it had become a battlefield between species and powers that humans could not understand or stop. He took a small cloth from his bag and handed it to her. She wiped her face and gave a tiny nod, not a smile, but not fear either, maybe something in between. Liam knew. She did not trust him completely, not yet, but she had eaten his food and now they were in this together. Suddenly, the device on her wrist flashed green, then blue, then red. Neva gasped and pressed it quickly. A tiny voice came out in a language Liam did not know. Fast words, soft tones, full of worry and command. Neva answered with urgency, her voice shaking like the light in a storm. She looked at Liam and pointed up, then touched her heart and pointed at him again. Liam understood rescue was coming. And she had told them about him. He felt a strange warmth inside, like he mattered, like this moment meant something more than survival, maybe even destiny. But the light on the device turned black and a sharp alarm rang out. Neva's eyes went wide. She grabbed Liam's hand and pulled him back toward the darkest corner of the cellar. He followed without question as the old wooden door above them opened slowly. With a long, dry creak, two tall figures stepped into the cellar, their armor black and smooth like stone, polished by time, their faces hidden behind strange helmets with red eyes that glowed like fire. They moved without sound, scanning the room with devices and long weapons in their hands. Neva held her breath, clutching Liam's arm tight as if to protect him. Liam did not move. He just stared at the strange soldiers and waited for death or mercy. Then one of the soldiers spoke, a deep voice in a calm, strange tongue. Neva replied quickly, her words strong but respectful. She stepped forward slowly and raised her wrist, showing the device. The soldiers paused, then looked at each other, then back at her. One of them pointed at Liam and said something sharp. Neva stepped in front of him, arms wide, her voice loud and firm. The soldier did not move for a long moment, then lowered his weapon. The second one opened a small box on his belt and pressed a button. A blue light filled the cellar, and in seconds they were not in the cellar anymore. They stood on a platform made of shining metal, floating in the sky above the broken city below. Liam gasped, wind blowing through his hair, lights blinking all around, towers rising into the clouds, ships moving like fish in a glass ocean. Neva stood beside him, holding his hand tight, her face serious but not afraid. The soldiers guided them into a round ship, doors closing with a hiss. Inside, the air was warm and clean, lights soft and music playing from somewhere far away. Not like Earth, not like war. This was something different, something peaceful, something unforgettable. Neva led Liam to a small room with soft chairs and a clear window showing the stars. She sat down and looked at him, her voice soft as she said his name. Liam. He looked at her, surprised to hear her speak it. Her voice was strange but beautiful, full of memory and promise. She touched her chest and said Neva again, then touched his hand and said thank you in his language. Liam smiled for the first time in a long time, maybe in years. He nodded and said, you are welcome, but inside his heart was full of questions. Why was she really here? What danger had followed her, and what would happen now that the stars knew where Earth was? As the ship rose higher, leaving the ruined world below, a shadow passed across the stars, a dark shape far away but coming closer. Something big, something silent, something with eyes that never closed and a heart that never forgave. The stars had changed and the future would not wait. The sky looked calm as the ship moved through space, silent and smooth like a dream. But Neva was not calm. Her hands moved across glowing buttons, her eyes focused on strange symbols flashing across the screen. She sat beside Liam, who watched everything with wonder and confusion. He had never seen such beauty, stars so close they felt alive, colors he had never known danced outside the window. Yet Neva only looked worried. Liam touched her arm gently, trying to ask without words what was wrong. She turned to him slowly, then pointed at the dark corner of the screen where a red mark blinked over and over. She spoke in her language, soft but tense, her voice heavy with fear. Then she reached for the panel again and brought up a large image. Liam leaned closer and saw it, a ship, no, a shadow that looked like it ate the light around it, long sharp edges black like cold fire. It was not following them, it was hunting them, the same way a hawk hunts a rabbit, fast, silent, cruel. Neva pointed again and made a motion with her fingers like breaking something, then touched her head as if to say, this thing destroys minds, not just bodies. The Ship around them began to hum louder, the walls shaking just a little as if the ship itself felt fear. The two soldiers from before came into the room. One spoke quickly to Neva, who stood up and began to argue, her voice louder, now her hands waving sharp in the air. Liam stood too, not sure what was happening, but knowing something bad was coming suddenly. A loud sound echoed through the ship like metal bending under pressure. Alarms flashed, red lights spinning in every room. One soldier grabbed Neva's arm and the other pulled Liam toward a small chamber near the back of the ship. The door opened fast, and they pushed both of them inside. The soldier looked at Liam and said one word, "Protect." The door closed and locked them in the chamber, which had soft lights and 2 seats. Liam sat down, breathing hard. Neva stood still, watching the wall that now showed what was happening outside. The dark ship had moved closer, huge and terrible, its surface shifting like it was alive, strange marks glowing on its side as if it was made of pain and memory. Small defense ships flew from Neva's vessel, firing bright beams, but the dark ship did not stop. It absorbed the attacks like rain on a mountain. Then one by one it destroyed them with beams of black light that left nothing behind. Liam felt his chest tighten. This was not war, this was the end of things. Neva touched the wall and a blue circle appeared. She spoke into it, then looked at Liam with tears in her eyes. She reached into her coat and took out a small crystal glowing with soft light. She placed it in his hand and closed his fingers around it, her voice calm but filled with meaning. She touched her chest, then his, and said, "Safe." Then she sat beside him and closed her eyes. The room around them began to shift, light bending around them, colors twisting, sound fading. The chamber was an escape pod. Liam understood that now, but it was not a normal one. It was powered by something ancient, something hidden even from Neva's enemies. He felt the crystal in his hand grow warmer, brighter. His skin tingled, his mind felt open like a door unlocked. Then, with a sudden jolt, the pod launched, spinning through the stars, pulled by light and speed far beyond what Liam thought possible. Through wormholes, through shadows, through silence, the pod flew for what felt like forever, and then it stopped gently, as if placed by a giant hand. The door opened to green light and soft wind. Trees swayed under a golden sky. Strange birds flying above. This was not Earth, but it felt like home, peaceful, safe, hidden from the eyes of war. Liam stepped out, holding the crystal. Neva followed, weak and pale, but alive. They had escaped the hunter, but not for Vernova. Looked at the sky, her voice soft. She said one word again and again, not in Liam's language, but he understood. Danger would come again. This place was only a pause, a moment of peace before the storm would return. Liam looked at the crystal, then at Neva, and he nodded. They would not run next time, they would stand. The air was sweet and full of strange scents as Liam stepped deeper into the forest, leaves glowing faint blue under the golden light. The trees were tall and curved like giant arms, reaching toward the sky, their bark soft and warm like living skin. The ground hummed under his feet and small lights floated around him like stars fallen from the heavens. Neva walked beside him, moving slowly, her body still weak, her steps unsure, but her eyes were watching everything. Her fingers touched the leaves, as if she remembered them, as if this place was more than a hiding spot, as if it knew her name before she ever arrived. Liam held the small crystal tight in his hand, its light now soft and steady, no longer pulsing, just resting like a sleeping heart. They came to a pool of water, clear and still reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. Neva knelt beside it and whispered something. The water rippled, then glowed with symbols rising from its surface, spinning gently above it. Liam stared amazed as images appeared, shapes of stars, ships, planets, battles long forgotten, and faces filled with both sorrow and hope. Neva pointed at one of the shapes, a tall figure with silver eyes and wings made of light. She touched the image gently and then placed her hand on her chest. She said the name Leorin and looked at Liam, her face full of meaning. He did not understand the words, but he saw the tears, he felt the pain, the memory of someone lost. The forest responded with soft music drifting from the trees, a sound like wind and song mixed with memory. The lights in the air moved faster now, as if dancing for them, guiding them deeper into the woods. Neva followed without fear. Liam followed her, trusting her steps, even though the forest felt alive in ways that made his skin crawl. Soon they reached a clearing where a stone stood tall and alone, covered in ancient marks glowing faintly as if breathing. Neva touched the stone and it opened like a flower, revealing a spiral path going Deep underground, they looked at each other and then walked inside the stone. Closed behind them, the light from the crystal in Liam's hand growing brighter as the darkness wrapped around them. The path was smooth and warm under their feet. Strange symbols lit up as they walked. The walls told stories through pictures carved into the stone, pictures of people standing with aliens of hands reaching across the stars, of weapons falling in gardens growing of fire, and something deep like a promise. Liam felt like he was walking through the memory of the universe itself. At the bottom, they found a chamber round and wide, filled with floating crystals, and gentle light in the center stood a tall figure, not made of flesh but light and memory. It turned as they entered, its voice soft and deep, speaking not with words but with feelings. It greeted Neva like an old friend and then turned to Liam with curiosity and warmth. The figure spoke of time, of stars, of promises made and broken. It told of the hunter ship that now searched for them across the galaxy. A machine born from fear and fed by silence. It had no face, no voice, only purpose to erase all that remembered, peace, all that held love. It would not stop. It had no soul to change. Neva stepped forward and placed her hand on the figure's chest. Her voice steady and full of strength, she asked for help, not for herself, but for Liam, for Earth, for all who still dreamed of peace. The figure looked at her, and then at Liam. It raised its hand, and the crystal in Liam's palm rose into the air, spinning faster, glowing brighter. Liam felt something enter his mind, not pain, not fear, but light and history, knowledge of places and people he had never seen, memories that were not his but now lived inside him. He fell to his knees as the power of the crystal filled him with warmth and energy. He could feel the earth, the stars, the quiet voice of the forest itself. The figure lowered its hand, and the crystal floated back into Liam's palm, smaller now, but changed. It was no longer just a key, it was now a seed, a spark of what had been and what could be. Neva helped Liam stand, her eyes full of pride and sadness, and something more, something strong, like hope. The figure spoke one last time, not with words but with light that wrapped around them. It showed them a path, a way to awaken something hidden on Earth, something buried long ago, something that could protect not just them but all who still believed in kindness. The light faded, the chamber dimmed, the path behind them opened as they walked back toward the surface. Liam looked at the crystal, then at Neva, and for the first time he felt ready, not to run, not to hide, but to rise, to stand, to become more than just a boy in a broken world.
The wind over old Earth was sharp and dry, filled with ash that never stopped falling. The sky was darker now, as if mourning something lost long ago. Broken buildings stood like lonely ghosts, and the streets were empty of all life except for the silent machines that floated above, watching, listening, waiting. Liam stepped onto the cracked ground, his boots making soft sounds against the dust. His hand held the small glowing crystal, which now pulsed with quiet energy like a beating heart. Neva walked beside him, her face calm but her eyes always searching, always alert. Her long cloak moved with the wind, as if it had a life of its own behind them. The hidden ship waited silent and cloaked among the ruins. They had returned to the place where it all began, the city where Liam had once found her, cold, hungry, and afraid. Now it was time to find what the light had shown them deep under this land. Something slept, something old and strong, something that could fight back against the shadow that hunted them through the stars. They moved through the streets, careful not to be seen. The machines above scanned the ground with red beams, but Neva carried a small device that bent the light around them, making them invisible to the watchers. They reached a large broken tower, its top gone, its walls cracked, but its base still standing. Liam looked at the stone wall before him, then at the crystal, which now glowed brighter. He placed it against the wall, and the stone shimmered, then vanished, revealing a stairway going down into the dark. They entered without a word. The air was cool and heavy with silence, each step echoing like thunder in a grave. The stairway led to a massive chamber hidden far below the surface, filled with machines and lights that blinked weakly as if wakened from a long sleep. The floor was smooth metal, and the walls were covered in symbols like the ones in the forest stories. Written in light and shadow, waiting to be read. In the center stood a large circle, made of stone and steel, its edge marked with ancient runes. The air around it pulsed with unseen energy. Liam walked to it and placed the crystal in a small opening on its side. The room shook gently, lights flickered, and the circle began to glow, spinning slowly, then faster, until a beam of pure light shot into the air. The light spread through the walls, through the ground, through the city above. Machines powered by the old world came to life. Lights blinked on towers, buzzed with energy, and a sound like a song without words filled the sky. It was not loud, but it carried across the land like a call, like a voice saying, "I am still here. I have not forgotten." In space, far above, the Dark Hunter's ship paused, its black eyes turning toward the source of the light, its body shifting like smoke and fire. Its silence, now broken by a single pulse of warning. It began to move faster now, angrier, more focused. It had found them. Again back on Earth, Liam stood in the center of the chamber as the circle of light began to change, forming a shape within it, a figure slowly rising from the beam. Made of light and memory, tall and shining, with eyes like stars and hands like fire. It looked at Liam and spoke without sound. Liam felt the words in his mind, not harsh but strong, full of power and truth. The figure said he was the keeper of the seed, the voice of the first flame, the last guardian of Earth's hidden strength. He had slept for centuries, waiting for the one who would wake him, not with weapons but with kindness. He spoke of the day Liam gave his last food to a girl from the stars, and how that one act had echoed across time like a bell in the void. How it had unlocked the path that now stood before them. Liam listened, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. Not fear, but purpose, something deep and true. Neva stood beside him, watching the figure with respect and awe. Her people had searched for this light for generations, never knowing it waited on the same world they had once hurt. Now it opened its heart to a human boy because he had chosen kindness over survival. The figure raised its hand and touched Liam's forehead. A wave of warmth spread through him, and the crystal in his palm vanished, becoming part of him. Light flowed through his veins, and knowledge filled his mind. He saw maps, codes, weapons hidden across the planet, placed there long ago by those who had hoped for peace. The figure began to fade, its light returning to the circle, but its voice remained in Liam's heart, a final message saying, "You are now the fire, protect this world. Light the path, stand against the dark. Never let fear silence your heart." The chamber grew quiet again, the light dimming but not gone. Liam stood taller now, eyes full of resolve. Neva placed her hand on his shoulder and gave a small nod. Together they turned and walked back toward the surface. The war was not over, but now Earth had awakened. The ground shook beneath Liam's feet as the sky turned dark, with the shadow of incoming alien warships above him. He stood beside Neva at the edge of the cliff, staring at the horizon where massive energy blasts painted the clouds in red and blue streaks. Neva raised her arm, and a glowing device wrapped around her wrist sent a signal to a fleet that hovered just beyond the human radar. Day was the day the final battle would begin, and the future of Earth would be decided. Liam had never seen anything like this before. Armored humans with alien weapons stood in formation, ready to fight side by side with Neva's alien soldiers. The bond between them was strong and forged through trust, pain, and the memory of a shared kindness long ago. Liam turned to Neva and asked, "Are you ready?" She nodded, but her eyes looked heavy, like she was hiding something. Then the skies roared as enemy warships unleashed a hailstorm of plasma, fire tearing through the clouds and striking the ground near their base. Liam shouted orders, and his team scattered, taking positions in the trenches while Neva's team activated their shields. Explosions rocked the battlefield, and the screams of battle echoed across the wastelands. Liam charged forward, blasting enemy drones with his hybrid rifle while shielding a young fighter who had fallen above him. Neva soared with her jetpack, moving like light through enemy squadrons, taking them down with graceful precision. But then it happened. Blinding light flashed in the sky as a massive mothership descended, breaking through the clouds like a metal god. It fired a beam toward the Earth that shattered mountains and sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Neva screamed to Liam to fall back, but he was already running toward the danger. He saw a squad of humans trapped under debris and pulled them out one by one, using the strength and training Neva had given him. But the beam returned, and this time it struck close to Neva. Liam turned and saw her fall from the sky, her wings flickering and her body spinning down like a broken comet. He ran with everything he had, screaming her name as she crashed near a crater in the middle of the wars, and smoke covered the area, and Liam coughed, trying to see through the dust. Then he found her. Neva lay on the ground, her armor cracked and glowing, blood leaking from her side. She looked at him with weak eyes and whispered something he could barely hear. He held her hand and told her to stay with him, that Earth still needed her, that he still needed her. that he still needed her. She smiled faintly and said, "I came back for you, and I am glad I did." From her chest, she pulled out a crystal, glowing with strange golden light, and pressed it into his palm. Liam felt a surge of warmth and power flow through his body, as if the stars themselves had entered his. Sully looked at her confused, but she whispered, "This is my last gift to you. Use it to protect your people and end this war." Her hand went still. Liam stood up, the crystal glowing brighter in his hand as the mothership charged its final weapon, raised the crystal high, and shouted with a voice that echoed across the Scathar. Crystal burst into pure light and shot a beam into the heart of the mothership. For a moment, time stopped. Then the sky exploded. The mothership shattered in the air, breaking into pieces like glass and falling like burning stars. The enemy army panicked and fled, their ships falling apart as the energy wave spreads. The battlefield grew silent, except for the hum of the crystal still glowing in Liam's hand. He turned back to Neva and fell to his knees beside her. Her eyes were closed, her breathing faint but steady. Liam whispered, "You kept your promise, and now I will keep mine." He looked at the sky, which was now clearing, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter than ever. The war was over, but the story of their bond had only just begun.
Liam sat beside Neva as the smoke cleared around them and the battlefield slowly returned to silence. The crystal in his hand had dimmed, but its warmth still pulsed with soft light, as if it held a piece of her inside eye. Looked down at Neva, who still lay motionless, her chest rising slowly with each breath, her skin pale but glowing faintly. Soldiers began to gather around, both human and alien. Their weapons lowered, their faces filled with disbelief and awe. The sky above had turned a calm golden hue, as if the universe itself had paused to witness what had happened. Here Liam closed his eyes and remembered the first day he saw her so many years ago, small and hungry and scared and lost. He never thought that giving her his last piece of food would lead to this moment, a battle that saved the planet and a bond that changed galaxies. He touched her face gently and whispered, "You came back like you said you would, and you saved us, alas." If hearing his words, Neva's fingers twitched, and her eyes fluttered open just a little. Her voice was weak but clear as she said, "I told you I would return, and I did." Liam smiled through the tears in his eyes and told her to rest now, that the war was over and they had won. But she slowly shook her head and pointed toward the broken sky above them. "This is not the end," she said. "This is only the beginning." From the clouds above, a new ship descended slowly, but it was not a warship. It was a peace vessel bearing the symbol of unity between her people and the humans. A door opened and a tall alien stepped out, dressed in white armor with a golden crest. He was Neva's commander and her mentor. He walked to them and saluted both of them, saying, "You have done more than any warrior in history. You saved not only your world, but also healed the wounds between our stars." Liam stood up, holding the crystal in one hand and supporting Neva with the other. He looked at the commander and asked, "What comes next?" The commander replied, "There is much to rebuild, but also much to learn. You will lead the first human envoy to our galaxy, and Neva will stand beside you as guardian." And Brizhaniva tried to rise, but her strength was not yet enough, so Liam gently lifted her into his arms and carried her to the ship. People watched in silence, some kneeling, some clapping, all understanding they had witnessed something far greater than a battle. They had seen a legend begin inside the ship. Neva rested while doctors treated her with advanced alien tech, and Liam stood at the window watching Earth grow smaller as they left the surface for the first time in his life. He felt like he belonged to something greater, a mission, a purpose, a promise that had been fulfilled. Neva woke again hours later, stronger, her body healing faster with the help of alien energy flowing from the crystal still in Liam's pocket. She reached for his hand and held it tightly and said, "I am alive because of you, and I will always stay by your side." Liam smiled and said, "You are not alone anymore, and neither am I." Their hands stayed together as the ship flew into the stars, leaving behind a world that was broken but not lost. The news of their act spread across galaxies, and both alien and human worlds began to speak of them as symbols of peace and courage. They were called the seed and the flame. She the one whose life was saved by kindness, and he the one who gave it without expecting anything in returning. The years that followed, Earth rebuilt with the help of their new allies, and Liam became the first human ambassador in alien space. He learned their ways, their technology, their history, and shared with them the strength and heart of humanity. And Neva never left his side. Together, they formed a council that ensured no other world would suffer as theirs had. They trained new defenders, new leaders, and new thinkers from both species, and, though battles still came and shadows still rose, the memory of their bond was enough to guide light through the darkness. One evening, many years later, Liam and Neva stood on a balcony of the Galactic Council building looking out at a sky filled with stars and ships and peaceful worlds. Liam held her hand and said, "Do you remember the day I gave you food?" Neva laughed softly and replied, "I remember the taste and their kindness more than the food." Liam nodded and whispered, "You repaid it 1,000 times." She smiled and answered, "Maybe, but I think the story is still being written, and somewhere far below on a quiet part of Earth a child looked up at the stars and asked her father, "Do you think aliens are real?" He smiled and said, "Let me tell you a story.